Good
Good
afternoon.
morning.
Oh, good morning, I should say, for
Good
those
whatever.
in British Columbia there. So yeah, I mean, it's middle afternoon. It must be, I don't know, quarter past 6 or 7 in the morning. I'm so looking forward to this, because we're going to have a bit of medievalism and Game of Thrones. I mean, what's not to love there? So without delaying any more, I'm going to hand you over to Alan and Tannis.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
So I'm Tannis Morgan, and this is Alan Levine. As everybody knows, he barely needs any introduction. And we're here to show you some stories from the voices of instructors who are using the OpenETC. And I don't know if anybody's been to some of the other OpenETC presentations that have happened at this conference, but I'll just explain briefly. The OpenETC is an EdTech collaborative that was started by myself, Brian Lamb, and Grant Potter, and now has the addition of Anne-Marie Scott and Clint Lalonde, and numerous other people in the background as well, including Alan, who was brought on this year to help us with some community coordination. But basically, for what you need to know for this presentation today is that we're really about providing a cooperative structure to open educational technology, contributions, not contracts. We look to people who use the OpenETC to contribute back to keep this going. And it's been running for about 5 years now. So what we are starting to cultivate is a real collection of really interesting things that have happened in the environment using WordPress or Mattermost. Those are just a couple of the services that are in the OpenETC. And in combing through what's been happening in the OpenETC, we've pulled out a few examples. We contacted the instructors who actually were responsible for their creations and asked them in their own voice to share what they did in the OpenETC impacted their teaching and learning, what it allowed them to do, what worked for them. And that's what you're really going to hear today. Is you're going to hear a couple of stories of instructors in their own voices talking about the OpenETC and their teaching and learning. And then Alan and I are going to come back and, really the question we have today is do open education practices require open ed tech? And that's really going to be the question that we're going to leave you with today. So
excellent. Let's get to the stories. So just to be clear with, especially for the WordPress, this is open to all BC educators and students. It's kind of a self-service thing. So we're going to hear first from Dana Wessel-Lightfoot at UNBC about a fascinating history course, and I'm going to let her tell it.
I can't hear it.
Oop, did I goof up? Did I mess up?
It's just me, or it worked great 5 minutes ago.
Oh boy, nothing like screen time. Okay, I'm going to share it again with the audio, and we're going to start over and reset the clock.
This semester, I taught a 400-level course on Game of Thrones and medievalism, using two resources from OpenETC, a Mattermost chat board, and a WordPress course website. I wish I could convey how amazing both of them were in a clear and concise way, but here I'll go. Both of them provided me with the tools to support my pedagogical vision and the framework I had for my course. Through the course website, I could map out the core components of the course for students in a logical way, but also through a variety of different structures. Each page I built connected to the others in a relational way, so students could see how the whole course fit together, but also follow it in a logical fashion. I also created a podcast for the course, and the students loved that they could download each episode and listen to it when they wanted, but also untethered to Wi-Fi or data. And I think for our students this semester, getting away from screens was so important. So it's really crucial to me that the course website was open access so that anyone could use the materials I presented, readings, handouts, podcasts. And I've had lots of people who have, as a result, been listening to my podcast who aren't my students, but are starting to think about history and the way it impacts our society in lots of different ways, which is super exciting to me. So alongside the WordPress site, I used a Mattermost chat board as a means of communicating with my students, but also providing them with a space to discuss course material and connect with one another. And while I created separate channels for each group, I put the students themselves in charge of establishing the weekly conversations and keeping them going. They loved the chat board framework because it's so much more dynamic than a traditional discussion board on an LMS. It gave students the opportunity to engage with conversation with one another in real time, but also when it suited their schedules, and it was easy for them to follow. And I became an observer. I was only an occasional participant when they would tag me in those discussions, but really the students were the drivers. And wow, did they have amazing conversations. Plus, I have to put a plug in for the DM feature, as it helped reduce my email, and really, who doesn't want less email? But also stay connected with my students more easily. Email easily gets missed in my inbox, which is always overflowing. But the DM I would just leave until I had a chance to look at it and I knew it was there. So it was a great tool. So overall, I can't imagine teaching a course now without using these resources. They've completely changed the way I think about how I interact with my students online, but also the various possibilities that I can use, such as the podcast, for example, to make my class connect to the broader world.
And we apologize. We had hoped we could sort of page through her site as you're talking, and it really is worth looking at. And also to mention that these stories, we created the site that this presentation is embedded in as a place for anybody in the OpenETC who has done a site or used a surface to post a story in audio, text, video. And so it's a way of, we're asking, when we say contributions, not contracts, is to say, like, one way you can give back to this community is to just share your work so others in the space and outside can see what is possible. But obviously there's so many things we could spend the whole presentation highlighting some points that Dana meant. But I hear it kind of transformed the way that she looks at her course. I mean, she has a fantastic concept, but the way this course is structured, and I really hope you spend some time visiting it, is really impressive.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think there was a lot of creativity in just taking, a WordPress site, adding a podcast to it, and then figuring out that the communication space could also be in Mattermost, which is the other highly used service that the OpenETC is providing the sector. So just the combination of these simple tools and resulting in something really different and unique. So, and you'll see that in that we'll be sharing, if you want, while we're playing the audio for the next one, there will be a link in the chat as well that you can just explore, because the next one is also a really great example of, I think, a mix of community-based learning. So, learning in the community, but using WordPress as a way to share student work and also just take the course into a more open way.
I used the OpenETC website instead of a conventional program like Blackboard or Canvas for my experiential learning course that I taught first in 2017 and then again in 2019. It was on the suggestion of the IT person and IT teaching person, Grant Potter, at my University of Northern British Columbia. And he just sort of said in passing, why don't you just make it all online and open to the world rather than putting behind a walled service where in the way that you normally would share course content and messages with students. And I liked the idea because the course I was doing was an experiential learning and community engagement course at a National Historic Site near Prince Rupert, British Columbia, in Port Edward at the North Pacific Cannery. And it just seemed to really work with the overall goal of the course. But thinking about it, it actually could work really well with any course. There's no reason why my syllabus needs to be accessible only by a login. In fact, there's no reason why my assignment descriptions or anything like that needs to be accessible by a login. And to communicate with students, I can do that, of course, via email. I don't need to do it through this online system. So I really like the openness of this OpenETC WordPress website. I had experience working with WordPress, just making my own professional page, and it's a very user-friendly interface. And so on the one hand, just for running the course, it was an enjoyable kind of way to run a course. And then it really helped with the community engagement and delivery of the course, because a huge part of this course, and unlike other courses I would teach, the students' projects were based on their own research in archives and through interviews with people on site in Port Edward and Prince Rupert. And then instead of writing conventional essays, which would be normal in a history course, they instead had these public history projects. And so then the website also served as a way to share with students' agreements. So the students submitted their essays or their assignments via email. But then I said, I'd like to put this on the course website. In the case of written assignments, sometimes I had minor corrections to a Word document, and then they would send me a revised version, and we sort of then published it on the course website. So this is, again, another wonderful thing about this OpenETC WordPress website, that you can then also show the course deliverables for the students who agree to do so. And it was just a wonderful interface and experience teaching with it. It's something that now on reflection, it could be used more broadly in lots of my teaching. There's no, as I said already, there's no reason why I need to be using something like Canvas or Blackboard to communicate with students, because also it's a way to share the things we're doing in the classroom, but even if it's a conventional kind of class, it's a way to share things that we're doing in the classroom with the broader world, to be sort of open about the course content, and hopefully some of the things that students are learning about could actually be used by other people elsewhere.
So I really love this one because what he had a face-to-face sort of class experience, but where students were going into communities, Indigenous communities up north and northern BC that had where there used to be a lot of fishing and canneries, and they were interacting and interviewing and gathering, you know, looking at historical artifacts and that sort of thing to create this collection. So he has this collection on this website now of student research projects that included audio, video, artifacts that really get at the history, this rich history of British Columbian canneries. And there's a newspaper article that was written about what he was doing, which is also really interesting. I'll get our background people to pop that in the chat as well, just to give you a sense of just really the blend of open education practices that was very much community embedded and facilitated by making these artifacts more open. And as a result, this is a really rich sort of research history site around BC canneries, which I think is also a great contribution beyond the course. So how much time do we have left?
Probably not much.
This goes by.
I thought we'd go back to the site itself, so we could just give an overview, Tannis, of the other stories. You know, typically when I've done these kind of presentations, I pay a little snippet, but I think what they said was so compelling that we wanted to do. So just to let you know, we got a message from a student from the EdTech program at University of Victoria. A really profound thing about their Mattermost community, which again is an open source version of more or less what Slack or Teams do, but most of the faculty we hear from say it's a lot simpler for them and their students to use. We have from Langara College using an OpenETC site to create a book club to discuss current topics. We have some more history sites seem to be well featured here, which I really and then from JIBC, Jennifer Mcfarlane, is that right? Jessica Motherwell
Mcfarlane. Yeah.
Teaching a research class, which I thought was fascinating. She has her students do hand draw comics as a way to practice their understanding of the concepts, and then they share them in an OpenETC site, and sort of it's a community gathering, so you can see other people's work and a reaction to the same assignment prompts, and it's one of my favorites in there. So again, what we set up is this place where people, if we can sort of gently encourage them, and we say, got 5 minutes, they can post their story here. And there's lots of ways they can do it. They can link it to something they've produced. They can upload an audio file or an image, and they can even record it directly into the site. And then we ask them for some information about it. So we're just at the beginning here, but we hope that we can sort of encourage this as a community practice within OpenETC for people to think as they create sites, because there's a lot of things we didn't even show you. So there's what we've been able to do in OpenETC is to set up more or less sites that are already built out as templates. So we've got, I don't know, 10 or 12 that are sort of portfolio style templates for different course areas. So students, instead of getting an empty WordPress site, they get a starter site. So there's like hundreds and hundreds of portfolio sites within the mix.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things about doing this process as well is just seeing, for example, Clint Lalonde is using Mattermost to teach a course, and he actually posted a blog post that step by step lays out how he structures it, so that in the event that somebody else wants to go, well, how would I actually move my students out of the LMS into Mattermost? And how would I structure Mattermost to make it an effective teaching environment? He's already contributed that as part of his description and audio clip that he provided as well. So there's more examples on the site that we created for this presentation. There's more examples on the actual site, which is, what are we calling it? openetc.opened.ca.
Yeah.
Is where we're collecting it. And I want to say too, I want to shout out to Alan, who made this really easy as well, because one of the things that it allows people to do is just record audio directly onto the site, so they don't need to upload anything. And I think that's really been helpful in getting contributions as well.
And also in the dog fooding category, this is a site that's also available for OpenETC members. That this template that we use for this site is just within the mix of things that are available. There's also people do project sites. So, you heard from the community effort for 25 years of ed tech. The site for that is hosted in there. We have a couple many project sites that are in there. So there's a nice array of different kinds of sites. And yeah. I don't, do you want to mention, I could quickly share Josie's site? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, why don't we pop that? Why don't we'll put the link to Josie's site as well while you're doing, so Josie Gray is a student who's doing a master's in accessibility and design at OCAD University, and she's just created a really wonderful podcast where she interviews various people around epistemic justice. But it's a wonderful site as well. And again, it's a student who's using OpenETC to create and make possible her graduate work. Oh, there it is. Magically showed up. Thank you. And it's a really wonderful podcast. It's really worth checking out as well. And I think I just want to include that, there are students that are doing really interesting things as well with the OpenETC.
I see Kyle's mentioning.
Yeah.
It's actually a bad metaphor, and I tried to stop using it, but software developers had this thing like about 10 years ago about eating your own dog food, meaning if you're creating a software product that you actually use it. I actually have understood it's got bad connotations in other cultural areas, so I generally tried to stop using it, but I kind of fell into that. But yeah, eating your own dog food, it's not something we recommend.
So yeah, we encourage you to go explore. And the question we have is really, maybe it's just one that we leave you with, which is, do you need open educational technology to actually do open education practices? It's something that I've been thinking about quite a bit. I do feel like, just having seen what instructors are doing, what students are doing, that definitely it's an important enabler for that. But that's really the question that we were hoping to leave you with today. And whether, that's really where some of our institutional focus may need to go if we really want to level up with open education practices in our institution, put some investment into open ed tech.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree. No, I think you've done great, and you've been so welcoming and sharing your material, because I think there's a lot of people who philosophically are attracted to open education, but they're not quite sure how they actually go about doing it. And I like the idea where you have, I know you didn't use the term wizards, but you also almost have sort of they're sort of IKEA versions, and it's if you just join the dots, and I don't mean to sound disparaging, but I do think it's really important. I think a lot of people would genuinely welcome the opportunity, but they don't know what they don't know. So I think by showing examples and taking the steps of how to do it, and so yeah, I think that's really well done. So listen, I think it's gone really well. I mean, I think you've answered so many questions. People have just been more just sort of acknowledging the work that you're doing. The links are all up there, and I think they're really, really useful. And anybody watching the recording, because as soon as this is over this afternoon, I'll be certainly jumping onto some of those links. So can I get a round of applause from everybody there to sort of acknowledge the work of Alan and Christina. So yeah, Clint is in there like that. So it'd be wonderful. So I think that, look, I think thanks very much for that. Is there any last thing you'd like to sort of just one final shout out?
Where's our countdown in Irish?
Yeah.
I've been warned by Martin Weller not to.
Who listens to him? What is he?
Yeah, that's all. So no, look at next time I'm back. I was twice in BC 2 years ago, so I'll happily go out and count Oscalia. So you do a closing Brian video though. Excellent. Yes, we have a closing video. So from Deb, who's been behind the scenes there like that. So round of applause from everybody. Look at, there's lots of stuff here, lots of great comments coming in there like that. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Nom nom nom.